Hey there, it's Kyle Boone, aka Strong Jaw. Welcome back to another episode of the Eye on College Basketball Podcast YouTube channel. And with me today, Adam Finklestein. We've got a great episode. Adam is the 247 Sports Director of Scouting. And you know it's going to get nerdy when you've got both he and me on this show because we're gonna just geek out on some basketball. We've watched some really good hoops this week. Victor Wembanyama, who we think will be the number one pick in the 2023 NBA draft class. Scoot Henderson, who we think will be the number two pick in the 2023 NBA draft. It's still a little early to make those declarations, but from what we saw this week, I think it's fair to say they are the current frontrunners at those respective positions. Finkelstein, it's been a minute. How you doing? How was the hoops and what was some first takeaways from what you saw on the hardwood this week?
My first takeaway, I went into the week saying, geez, I wonder if these kids can live up to this because they're 18 years old. And, Wembanyama has been anointed, not just by the media, but by NBA folks. So it was one of those things where, I'm always sensitive to putting labels on these guys, but after 3 days, now LeBron James is calling him a generational talent. So I think it's fair game for everybody at this point. But to not only play up to those expectations, but then to surpass them, it was really just incredible what we saw this week. And unfortunately, Scoot went down when they banged knees, but I thought Scoot was really good on Tuesday night. So talk about two super exciting prospects. This is just with still 8 or 9 months before the NBA draft. We've got a whole lot of runway and a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, for sure. So here's the little kind of the insight, the context you need to know to this discussion. Wembanyama, he's from France. He's 7'4". A lot of people believe that he's a generational talent. I saw Woj on ESPN last night. Basically said like he has a chance to be like the best prospect of all time. And I know that Woj does not use that type of hyperbole lightly. It's really interesting to see kind of just even what 2 games on U.S. soil, kind of the expectations and the hype that has built from these 2 games this week. LeBron called him an alien. Giannis said he has a chance to be one of the all-time greats. Steph Curry called him a 2K creator player, said he's the real deal. He scored 37 points in game 1, followed it up in Thursday's second exhibition with only 36 points. Kind of disappointing. You wish he would have got over 37. We will take it, though. He put on an absolute show, and with Scoot Henderson going down early in that game, kind of figured some juice would maybe leave that game, but Wembanyama just kept coming. Scoot, for his part, I think he did really well for himself. We'll get to him in just a little bit and talk about what we saw from him, especially on Tuesday. Had 28 points, 9 assists in the first game that they played. He left the second game early with what they said was a bone bruise in his knee. Banging with Wembanyama doesn't sound serious, which is great news. Both of these guys looked really good, as I think the clear top talents in the 2023 NBA draft class. So let's not bury the lead here. Let's talk Wembanyama. Talk of the town right now. Those were his first 2 games on U.S. soil. He and his Mets 92 team completely dazzled in both games. They split the series. They went 1-1. Let's go back to Tuesday. This was the first game. Both Scoot and Wembanyama played the entire game. Scoot was healthy. His team got the win, but Wembanyama just went bananas. 37 points, 5 blocks. He makes 7 of his 11 3-point attempts. Fink, what did you see from him in that game, specifically on offense? Because we know the defense, right, is kind of like just an anomaly almost. Like he is a unicorn. But offensively, I think he showed some stuff that was really impressive. What did you see from him on that end?
Well, you said the word hyperbole earlier, and I think when we all heard the, shot blocking of Rudy Gobert and the shot making of Kevin Durant, we were all just like, oh, he's the greatest basketball player ever born. Then, that was, I mean, because that's such a high bar. I mean, is there a better shot maker than Kevin Durant in terms of not just his ability to make tough shots, but his ability to get them off at his size? And then Rudy Gobert is as elite a rim protector as we've had in the generation in the NBA. So, if those are the bars simultaneously, I just went in thinking, as I said, there's no way any 18-year-old could live up to this. But to talk about his offense specifically, it was the shot making that really stood out, because we talk about we use words like lob threat and vertical spacer. This guy dunks like hopping over a toothpick. I mean, so he doesn't have to. His length is staggering. The way he changes the game around the rim on both ends is staggering. But the shot making at his size, and I'll tell you what, I know you asked specifically about Tuesday. But I thought the shot making last night, 2 threes in particular, that kind of three that he dribbled into in the corner, I mean, I was like, are you serious? And then, the one that was about 10 feet beyond the NBA 3-point line, that was like Steph Curry range. And again, he's 7'4", and and we went into this was kind of the baseline of expectation going in. The shot making, the shot blocking, the size, the length, but also the fact that he was being credited for moving very well for someone with that size. You think about some of the players who've been that size. I remember a couple months ago, somebody said well, we remember the way Sean Bradley used to move. He's a similar size. And it's like, no. This guy moves it's just at an entirely different level. And when you dig into what he's done, Wembanyama, that is, to prepare himself, to prepare his body, the time he spent in Dallas, in Germany, working with different experts, because they recognized the fact that his body type is not normal. And they had to make sure that they took extra precautions. And you can see both his physical gifts and presumably the work that they've done to make sure he stays as healthy as possible, because he was as mobile as we thought. But then, as I said, just the shot making, it wasn't just hey, with his feet set. It was, I mean, that corner three, I really can't, I watched, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I mean, it's kind of like dribbling to the corner, falling out of bounds. And first of all, nobody's going to be able to block that. So I think that was the thing that really took me aback, was the extent of his shot making and his ability to make just shots with such high degrees of difficulty without sacrificing his efficiency when you look at his total numbers.
No, I totally agree. I'm glad you mentioned that too, because that was absolutely a takeaway that I had was watching on Tuesday, right? He makes 7 threes out of his 11 attempts, and they weren't necessarily just all catch and shoot. There was a few where he just walked into pretty easy looks, but there was one in particular, that a step back from the top of the key that stands out, that I remember. That high degree of difficulty on some of those, but the 2 threes he made on Thursday were just, I mean, it's just who is this guy? What is,
it was ridiculous. Yeah.
Watching.
Right.
And one was I think he's trailing in transition. He's running the floor. He has the wherewithal to kind of know where the ball is and know that there's a spot open in the corner. He trails his guy, runs to the corner, grabs the ball, and as you described, literally is fading away in the corner from 3, chucks it up and makes it. That was really impressive. And then the other one that you mentioned was Steph Curry range. Yeah. He throws out a little dream shake, a little hezzy, top left of the corner, and just nails it. And I always thought the shooting would eventually come, and maybe 2 really better than maybe his normal shooting, but that was an example, I think, of just his ceiling and what he can be as an NBA prospect. We know the defense is going to be legit. He has an 8-foot wingspan. He's 7'4". The dude as Sam Vecini, who I think probably said this first, but I continue to like read and listen to his stuff. He's almost like invading my brain. He just changes like the geometry of
Yeah.
basketball in ways that like you almost you can't describe it. You just have to see it. And he has 9 blocks in 2 games, and yet like he could have easily had just like double that. He could have had 18 blocks. Just the way that he changes how teams play is so dramatic that to see it on the court and to see it, against Scoot Henderson and a really talented G League Ignite team, I thought was really impressive. That definitely stood out to me. Um, we've talked about his defense and what he can be, what we already know he is. When you're watching him on defense, how are you evaluating Wembanyama? Because I know you kind of operate almost as, like from a scout's perspective.
Yeah.
Footwork. How are you evaluating that? Because I'm watching the games, I'm aware of how he's affecting the game, but are you looking for like movement, like spacing, like
So
where?
I'll say this, and I'll just admit this. I think it starts with the fact that when you're watching this guy and you recognize this is something you've never seen before, everybody, or I'll speak for myself, you can't help but appreciate it from a fan's perspective first. So I'd be lying to you if I said, like, I'm watching that film and I'm like, oh, gee, look at his. I started that way, like watching the clips on Monday, and I was like, oh, he doesn't follow through the exact same way on each rep from behind the 3-point line. And then somewhere midway through the third quarter on Tuesday night, I was like, forget it. This guy's just everything and that much more. Like, the heck with his footwork. That I mean, and I don't mean to. Your question is obviously a legitimate one, but it's like saying what position does Kevin Durant guard? It's like, I don't know, depends on the matchup. You have to have him on the floor, and you're going to find the best matchup for him depending on who he's playing. Is he going to guard a bruising post? Maybe not, but you find a matchup for him. So and with Wembanyama, it's the length that you mentioned, the geometry of the court. Like, guys can go by him, and it's not going to matter to the same extent that it will to other players. So while he moves very well, his ability to erase mistakes, both his own and others, with most players, it's you attack their hip, you get past them, and then you shield them off. How do you shield somebody off who's got an 8-foot wingspan? And to that point, when you're 7'4" with an 8-foot wingspan, your ability to guard two at the same time as a help defender, kind of be close enough where you can recover to your man and still protect the rim, but simultaneously make a play on the ball in terms of helping on dribble penetration, it's vastly different than anybody else. So I think that those measurements combined with his mobility kind of defy common scouting principles. So I admittedly just was a fan for most of it, because you recognize that it's something you haven't seen before. He's not going to fit a conventional positional label on either end of the floor. But it's basically going to come down to who can we, like all the greats, who can we surround him with that is going to best maximize him. I will say this, the one thing that you come away with, and I actually thought he was a little stronger than I had thought too. I remember when those pictures came out on Monday, I said, oh, he's added some muscle mass.
Yeah.
But you just, you worry about injuries. And, for all the greats, I mean, you think about like, what would Derrick Rose's career have been like if he didn't get injured? What would Tracy McGrady's career have been like if he were, at his full max for a decade? And when this is all said and done, the reason why, the greats have been the greats is because they've been able to sustain that for not just years, but decades, in many cases, certainly LeBron's case. So you just hope that this frame will give him the longevity to maximize the potential that is so glaring from everyone beginning with LeBron James down to you and I.
Yep. Yeah, that's for sure. And yeah, I did think it was notable that all of these guys, LeBron, Giannis, I think even Adam Silver, they were all asked about
Yeah, he
Wembanyama.
talked about him in a press conference. Adam Silver's talking about an 18-year-old kid from France in a press conference. Yeah, and like geeking out while he's doing it, like he's like giddy while he's doing it. He's like, you can almost see him being like, "Our global rights are going way up," you
Yeah,
know. So
I think the first words he said, Adam Silver, that is, was, "Oh my." Uh, just to give you kind of a peek behind the curtain of just how even the highest levels of the NBA views this guy. But I found it notable that almost everyone who was asked about him, they raved about his size, his fluidity, his length, like all of those things that we have obviously watched. Throughout his growth as a prospect, and then even this week, all of them mentioned like he's got to stay healthy. He's got to stay healthy. I hope he stays healthy. Yeah, that's obviously someone who is an outlier in terms of his size and his length. That is the first thing that I think everyone thinks about, and you have to hope that he stays healthy. Chet Holmgren, a guy who was kind of similar in size, he's 7'2", 7'1", is already out for the year with a foot injury. And that was a concern, maybe, that he would not be able to stay healthy. Now, I think Chet's going to be completely fine. This doesn't sound like that's going to linger, but some of these guys, like, they just have unique body types that
yeah.
we don't know how they're going to hold up. So, if he's able to stay healthy, though, like, this guy can be completely special.
Well, well, durability is a requisite to greatness when you're talking about generational type talents. You know, you've got to do it year in and year out. And so, based on everything we saw this week, that's I don't want to say it's the only question mark, because different challenges can pop up, but it certainly seems like the only question mark, because, and I would be remiss if I didn't say this. I was impressed by his mentality too. He's got extreme confidence, yet like maturity about him. I thought like the way he handled himself in the media, the way he talks about himself, wanting to not model his game after anybody, how he appreciates kind of the artistic aspect of the game. Somebody asked him about Scoot, and he said, he probably would be number one if I hadn't been born.
Yep.
So, but it came across in a way which wasn't boastful. It was just like, yeah, I'm him, but Scoot's a great player. And so just the mentality. I mean, he just checked all the boxes, including mentality.
Yeah, and him and Scoot both, I think, have that. They both have that edge. They both have that confidence that they both just exude and kind of live with. And yet, I think they're both pretty grounded, right? I mean, it was pretty clear when Wembanyama was asked, because literally everyone was asked about Wembanyama, and people had mentioned to him that LeBron was raving about him, that Steph Curry was raving about him, and he's like, "Hey, look, I really appreciate the accolades." I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but like, I haven't done anything. I haven't even been drafted. Like, I still have a long ways to go. Like, this is a great step. Yeah, I'm very confident in my game right now. But like, I got to prove it. I got to continue to prove it. And I thought that was a good sign, because
100%.
there's a lot of guys who would get some of these accolades and be like, "Yeah, I'm him." Like,
let's face it, there's a lot of guys that would have shut it down after Tuesday, and shut it down not just for the week, but for the rest of the season. The fact that his agent had to come out and say publicly, like, no, we're not going to shut it down. He wouldn't allow us to. Exactly. That in and of itself made him different, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yep. So I think that's a good sign. I'm really excited to watch him over the next few months with Mets 92. That's a new team that he's joined, and I think he's going to continue to thrive and flourish, and will continue to be viewed as the number one prospect in this class. Let's get to Scoot, though.
Yeah.
He did play the game on Tuesday, had 28 points, had 9 assists, completely controlled the second half of that game in a way that I thought was really, really impressive, and probably underrated, just because everyone was watching what Wembanyama was doing. He goes out, plays like 5 minutes in the second game, has minimal impact. It looked like he was off to a good start, but the injury, like, it just completely derailed him. But what did you see from Scoot in that Tuesday game that stood out to you when you watched that?
Well, I said this on on CBS HQ this morning. My big takeaway from Scoot was that if he was in last June's NBA draft, he should have been the first pick.
100%.
And if he were in, and if Wembanyama weren't in the 23 draft, he'd be the odds-on favorite to be the first pick because, he is the prototypical. Wembanyama doesn't fit in any box, but Scoot is the prototypical explosive lead guard that the NBA is looking for right now. That Russell Westbrook, Ja Morant prototype. And he fits that in terms of his power, his size, his length, his explosiveness, his ability to get downhill, all of those things. But beyond that, there's that killer instinct that people can talk about, but he exudes it. And I think that the other thing that I am really impressed with by Scoot is his ability to navigate traffic and find space while operating at maximum velocity. So he can go through the lane and sculpt his way through bodies, find the smallest, whether he's creating space for that big time like step back move he made, or whether he's just finding the smallest angles to manipulate. He's got, in addition to his physical tools, he's got a knack for creating space and making plays with the basketball. That he is as dynamic a guard prospect as there is, not just in this NBA draft, but in the last couple, in my opinion.
He had a play in Tuesday's game where I jumped out of my seat. He was on the perimeter. He's got someone in front of him. He's trying to create separation, trying to create space. He goes yo-yo dribble through his legs.
Yeah.
Reverse, creates space, gets some leverage on his defender, knifes through the lane, goes to the other side, finishes in kind of awkward fashion. I believe Wembanyama was at the rim and just scooted it right past him into the cup. And
no pun intended.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And just the way that he was able to do that so effortlessly, like I think that's a pretty good encapsulation of his creativity as a playmaker. And it's his burst and speed really stood out to me as well. So all of
everybody knew about that. I think you and I are trying to articulate the same thing. It's like the quick reactions and just instincts, like, okay, defense does this and he does that. Like he's not processing it. He's just reacting in the split second. Like you hear scouts say like, oh, the game slows down for him. Like that's what they mean.
Yep.
When things happen and bodies move and angles reveal themselves, that you have a way of just immediately reacting and getting into that space. And however you need to articulate that as a scout and evaluator is one, but that's what I saw from Scoot this on Tuesday night, that I was like, oh, that like you're not, some athletic guards don't have like great spatial awareness or don't have great instincts or reactions, but he's got all of those things.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And that was in particular something that stood out, just the way he controlled that game, especially in the second half down the stretch. He was making it a point kind of early, I think, to try and get his teammates involved. The way that he was able to toggle between like, I need to take over, I need to be the guy that's taking the shots, and hey, I need to get my teammates involved because I'm getting so much attention right now that these guys are going to get better looks than I'm going to get right now. Just the awareness that he showed in kind of just being able to control that game, I thought was really impressive from Scoot. I was really disappointed to not see him play on Tuesday, but what he did on Thursday, but what he did on Tuesday, I thought was really impressive.
Another thing with Scoot, they're going to play a full G League season this year. So I know I'm looking forward to seeing him in G League games and just potentially random G League games where he's going to be able to measure himself throughout the course of the season. Victor's going back to France, but Scoot's going to be here and going to play, 50 more games.
Yep. Very excited about that. We've gone over our time. So I do want to do one last segment before we get out of here. I'm springing this on you. It's a surprise segment. Going to put you on the spot a little bit. It's a little game I made up. You want to play a little game, Fink?
Apparently I do, yes.
Okay. It's called Who Would You Take? Okay. I'm going to name a stud player or a prospect from recent past. You tell me if you're the GM of a team, and in a vacuum, you can use a player to build a team. Who would you take? Okay.
All right.
Victor Wembanyama or Chet
Victor.
Holmgren?
Oh, that's Victor.
Okay. Scoot Henderson or Ja Morant?
Ja Morant now or Ja Morant at 18? You know, are we saying, do I think Scoot will be better than Ja? Is that basically the question?
However you want to interpret it. I'll leave it up to you.
Huh.
It's pretty revealing that you have to think about this, I think.
Yeah, I do. What I'm wrestling with in my mind right now is Ja's durability versus the expectations that would put on Scoot. I have a lot more faith in Scoot's frame, but I'll say Ja just because he's proven it so far.
Yeah. Scoot Henderson or Trae Young?
Trae Young.
Okay. Victor Wembanyama or Anthony?
Victor Wembanyama. I'm sorry. Who are you going to say?
Anthony Davis. But I mean, I think that's probably any Victor question is probably Victor, right?
No, I'll say Victor. I'm gonna a young, if Anthony Davis is, if that's the line, I'll take the over.
Yeah. Victor Wembanyama or Luka Doncic?
Victor Wembanyama. This is gonna be on Hot Takes Exposed. My goodness.
Incredible though. And I don't think it's hyperbole either. And
I'm waiting for it. I know it's coming. Go ahead.
Victor Wembanyama or LeBron James?
Yeah, knew that was coming. I'm gonna take LeBron just because it's I'm not gonna do that to any 18-year-old kid. Like that's LeBron's gonna end up as the leading scorer in the game. He's gonna, he's got 4 NBA championships right now. I mean, that's, you gotta, to Victor's point, you got to do something before you get to that.
For sure.
You win
For
that
sure.
one.
If we were trying to answer these questions in, say like go back to when Trae Young was a NBA prospect,
mm-hmm.
I think these questions maybe get a little more clarity.
Well, and to your point, and this is, and I've said this on the record before, I'll say it on the record again. I got Trae's eval wrong. I never expected him to be as good as he is because he's kind of unprecedented. I mean, everybody uses the Steph Curry comparison, and from a skill set standpoint, that's fair. But I think like watching him in high school, I just remember thinking like, no one had played that style at that level in high school and had sustained that level of excellence across all three. People forget like Steph wasn't like a big time prospect in high school. High major schools passed up on him. They offered him walk-on spots. He went to Davidson, and that's where he played his way. And Bob McKillop saw the skill. But those guys, Steph Curry especially, like no one anticipated this. Trae Young, I certainly didn't anticipate this. I think we knew he was one of the best guards in the class. I think most people did. But he has, to his credit, he has exceeded. Some people will claim that they knew he was going to be this good, but I don't remember ever encountering anyone who said he'd be one of the best players in the NBA outside of his family. I think Trae had, and his family had, just like a deep belief in themselves, yep, which I think is kind of like a critical piece to him being as good as he is.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely missed the Trae eval as well. I don't even think I had him in my top 10, which yikes. Not great. It's really hard to recruit and evaluate some of these guys, scout. Like the production was there obviously with Trae, but the questions about his frame, like athleticism.
No one had ever, there was no one else like him before. You could say Steve Nash, you could say Steph Curry, but they didn't do what he was doing in high school. I mean, it was no one that size who had that level of volume or productivity in high school had ever seen it translate to both the college or the NBA before, at least in the modern era. Isaiah Thomas is the comp I've heard most recently of someone who's done that. But that was a different era of a different style of basketball.
Totally. Yep. Totally. Okay, Fink. Thank you so much for your insight and wisdom today. This was fantastic.
This was fun. Just like it was all week in Vegas.
Of course.
And on TV.
Love it. Be sure to follow Fink on Twitter at Adam Finklestein for more scouting analysis. He does a ton of really great work on there. Go to cbssports.com right now. My 5 takeaways from Scoot Henderson week are up on the website. You can check that out as well. Thank you all for listening and watching.
Did you just say Scoot Henderson week?
Did I say Scoot Henderson week?
I think you said Scoot Henderson week. Was it Scoot? I mean, Scoot, you were good, but like, I think it was Wemby week, like
Scoot Wemby week.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That was an oversight. Yeah, it was more Wemby week than Scoot week for sure.
And follow you on Twitter for Wembanyama Wednesdays, right?
Absolutely. Every Wednesday. There's going to be more content throughout the next few months for sure. Thank goodness. Great stuff. Thank you for listening and watching, everyone. Be sure to subscribe and like so we can make Nada happy. We will see you guys on the flippity flop. Y'all take care.